Okay.
Welcome to Parrot Literary Corner on Parrot TV, the show that invites writers from all over the world to explore their world within and their world without. And today, I have with me Rose Drew, of course, with my co-host, Dustin Pickering. Who is Rose Drew? What does he have to offer the literary world or the world entirely beyond even the literary boundary? So we'll get to know this by the time we go deeply into the content of our work and our life. So as usual, I'm not going to be the one that will anchor this. I'll just be coming in with questions where I feel I need to come in. Dustin is going to be fully in charge of the show today. So Dustin, over to you, please.
Thank you. My first question would be, just tell us a little bit about your background, your especially education and publishing.
Right. Hi, and thank you very much for asking me to do this. The interesting thing about Zoom is anybody from anywhere can chat. I'm right here next to a whole bunch of books in York and England. I'm originally from Florida, and I moved up north when I was really quite small, and we lived mostly in the New York, Connecticut area, and then I moved here about 15 years ago. My education is, well, I ran away from going to school when I was about 21. I was sick of it. I couldn't take it. It was just not for me. I was also undiagnosed as an autistic person. I just know I didn't like it. So then after I got hurt at work, I went back to school and I realized I'd been an anthropologist all those years. I was in sales. I would talk to people. I was always interested in other people. I bartended. I was the kind of person people would talk to about stuff. And so I realized I was kind of an archaeologist and anthropologist. And so I went into archaeology, then into anthropology. So I did my undergraduate degree with Charter Oak, which was really good because they allowed me to take old credits and turn them into a full degree with some new work. And it was good enough. I went into Yale. I did my master's at Yale. And then I worked for a year in Miami, went home. And then I ended up in England to do a 3-year PhD, which took 10 years. They don't like immigrants. You may have noticed Brexit. And it took forever. I've never gotten a job here doing the thing I was trained to do because they don't like immigrants. And so our hobby of book publishing has become our business. I mean, it was never to be a business. It was just to be fun and to do poetry and put things out. And then it turned into other things. And it's just turned into a business of its own. And I actually really love it. And so with my PhD in anthropology, I do research. People go, you get paid for that? No, you do it for free. In fact, you pay money because you fly other places. I'm a forensic anthropologist, and I don't get paid for that work either. But that's, well, sometimes, I mean, when I'm doing a job in something else, but I mean, some of that is just to learn about the techniques, but also to feel like you're part of a process. You can't stop the bad thing that's happened, but maybe you can help in some other way. And that's quite important. I had some small part of work to do with the Grenfell fire, which I was glad to do because I'm still just so furious about that. I can't even express it properly. And so that is important. So when I do work that I think moves the legal question forward or gives some kind of I don't use the word closure. I really hate that word. So I do that kind of work. So I'm a poet, I'm a performance poet. I run an open mic. I publish books, and I do anthropology. So that's kind of what I do.
Does anthropology at all factor into your poetry itself, or is there a sort of a link, do you think, or a convergence between the two disciplines in your own work?
I do think so. My mentor, who's in Indiana, Della Cook, I brought her a poem once. She loves poetry, and she went, "That's a very anthropological poem." And so she put it up on the door of her office, and it's about, it's called The God Squad. You know, don't try to save my soul, it isn't lost. Do not, hammer me with your views. They aren't mine. Give me the God of peace, good yams, safe motherhood, plentiful game, and so it's all about how, and so I talk about different gods and so, yeah, I think a lot of it is. And I think perhaps just my sensibilities of how I look at the world inform my poetry too. And I'm generally rather pissed off by outrageous behavior and inequality. So
do you have a specific view of human nature from your study, or, that you explore in your work and in your publishing?
Well, all humans want a lot the same things. We want friends, we want shelter, we want food, we want meaningful work, we want to feel a member of our community, we want love, we want safety, we want fresh water and clean air. So, I mean, all of us want these things, and we do it in various different ways. Culture is the way that humans make sense of their local world. And so a lot of times the cultures that we will build up help us make sense of where we're living right now. And so that's why a culture that develops in a desert will be different from a culture that develops in a forest and what have you. So human nature, I don't know. I think I completely missed that. I'm sorry. I had the COVID shot the other day and it's left me dizzy. So repeat your question.
I was just asking how, if you have a specific view of human nature and if it factors into your work at all.
No, that's where I fell off piece there. No, I'm afraid there is no one specific view. I just think that we have more in common than we have apart.
I agree.
The aspect, yeah, right. What I used to tell my students when I had students back in America, and sometimes here, as a PhD student, I did a lot of teaching. The second I got my degree, they said, go away. The one thing I tell my students, one of the things I tell them is, the one thing we have in common is that we're all unique. And so we,
kind of a paradox.
Steal it. And I work with human skeletons. Yeah. So I work with the part that we leave behind when we die. And so I do that I do that working with people who died in a workhouse 200 years ago. And there are various diseases associated with poverty and evidence of hard work. And oh God, they were locked into a room till they died of TB, my God. And so,
wow.
Well, we're heading there again, love. We really are.
Right.
So
yeah, it seems like it.
You criminalize the poor, you lock them up, you bring back workhouses. Oh, you're in a workhouse. Well, then you should probably work. We're taking care of you because you're impoverished. So while you're there, why don't you do something for us? Like prison work, but and it's just, we're there. We're criminalized poverty. So we're already back there. And then after it gets really bad and people start dying inside of a workhouse, someone will come across and say, we should do more for the poor. And then it'll go back again where they're going to bring out welfare and Medicare and Social Security. And then someone will say, but that's a lot of money. And then someone will say they're scroungers. And then someone will say, oh, the disabled are faking it. And then someone will say they're not paying their fair way. And then they'll start putting them in jail and we'll go back. So every 80 to 100 years, it repeats until, someone will come along in another 100 years and go, but we're killing everybody. We should do until humanity down. Until
cycling.
Yeah. So I choose the artifact, which is us, and I study dead people because I cannot solve their problems anymore. But maybe I can look at how we were treating people 100 years ago, 10,000 people years ago, how are we living? 2,000 years ago, how are we living? And then occasionally something to do with a modern legal medical issue.
Do you notice, since you've been in, you're rooted in America and you moved to Yorkshire, I believe, do you notice there's any difference between poetry cultures, between America and,
yes.
and
oh my God. You go to an open mic in America and someone's going to get up there and tell you about how her daddy raped her and her uncle beat her and then she stole cars and she's found a new way and now she's doing this. And they will just, it's the Jerry Springer show, but in poetry. You can talk about anything in America. You get in front of a microphone, you can talk about anything. I got here and they didn't like the fact that I was very political and maybe a little angry and upset about Trump and what the fuck was going on here with the Tories. And seriously, stop, and they were just, you want to make it, you want to win a slam in England, be funny. They don't, it's a medieval country. They have the big view of the world. They look at things in 1,000-year pictures. Your individual life has ended, and that does suck for you. But however, the whole country is kind of doing this. So you talk about, you might talk about funny things. You look at life in a big picture way when you're in basically a society that's 1,000 years old, 800 years old, 800 years old, and so it's just very different. My house is only 160 or 70 years old. In America, that'd be like, it'd have a plaque on the door. Here, it's just, when there's new builds, and when we first moved here, my daughter and I stayed in a pub that was 500 and some odd years old.
Wow.
It was not supposed to still be standing. They just kind of threw some boards together. The whole thing leans because they figured it had burned down by now, right? And it's still going. So here, they don't want a lot of, in fact, if you really want to win a slam, then you get up and do a poem about the fact that you're a survivor of rape or something. They'll be like, no one talks about that. And so you're famous. So, but in general, they want a funnier thing or they want a lighter touch, and then I go back to America, I can bring out all my damn good shit because here they don't want to hear it so much. So yeah, when I first got here, it was different.
Wow.
Very
striking difference there. They always talk about the British and English sense of humor.
I think the British sense of humor is the same as an American sense of humor.
Really?
It's just they want more of it here.
Oh, okay.
That's what I mean. They don't want to hear
fair,
your
I guess.
shit, right? Okay.
Right.
You got things going wrong with you, just shut the hell up. And don't forget, we don't have a problem here with white supremacy. No one talks about that. By the way, Windrush, and so, right?
So when you relocated to the States, how did you manage to transit? Because you're coming from a different setting with different ideologies, and you're coming to join, because I've read from your biography that you started by joining spoken words settings like that, maybe first Tuesday of the week, of the month, right? So spoken word, etc. How do you manage at the initial stage? I'm sure you must have faced a lot of challenges. How were you able to transit and cope with the setting? Because from your description, it means that the UK is more primitive or conservative than the United States. That's the summary of what I've got from you. So how did you manage to cope?
Do you know what? Mucha, you are completely correct. It is definitely that way. For one thing, the women, so what if this goes out all over the world? It's true, it appalls me. The women definitely tend to over-sexualize their clothing more. They will be far more lower cut and their boobs are up to about here. And there's more casual sexism. There's more, over here, a guy will bitch and moan about his wife getting the kids and everything because she probably did. And it's just very more sexist here. And then again, so that was very different. And when I first got to the University of York, they thought I was yelling and aggressive when I was just being an American and a poet. I said, are you kidding? I'm passionate and talking about things. And they thought I was yelling all the time. And I said I was having issues with some of the understanding because I am autistic. And they told me, no, I wasn't. Okay. And so it was very different. And when I would go to poetry events, well, first of all, there was none. So there's now a lot of poetry in York, and I started it. I got here and we were doing the poetry on the first Tuesday of the month in America, and we left it and we said, we won't do any poetry. We'll just come here and, I lasted a month and I was like, geez, I got to have an open mic because it's wonderful. Every month you get a captive audience and you get to talk about what you want to talk about and they put up with it, or, it's part of so I'd bring people up and I could say little words in between their poems and, it's just, it was wonderful. So I didn't have that all of a sudden. And so I brought that out here again. We started it 4 months after we arrived and there was nothing else. And then someone else started a poetry open mic at the same night, almost. In fact, they were supposed to be my partner, but then they stole the open mic and ran away and did it on a different night. Okay. And so I just started mine. So then we had 2 open mics in town, but basically I started them both and they wanted to have a featured performer and we didn't want it because we had done a featured performer in America and there's only 12 months of the year. So before you know it, you're booking people a year in advance. And then if they don't show up, or they show up drunk, or they show up and they leave, or, it just, so we didn't want to have a feature. They wanted to have a feature. That's great. So the open mic poetry here, I basically started it. And then there was the York Literature event, which I was on the founding committee. And then there's other things that happened. And I think that it probably would have happened, but because I was starting the ball, because I'm in this pesky American, I wanted to do stuff, it started going. But I would go to open mics and read my American poems, and they didn't do so well. I think that they, if I'm talking about America, it was okay, but it was different. They don't really necessarily want to hear that stuff. Although if I went down to London, then it was okay. You'll find London is a lot more like New York or Miami or any city, or Connecticut, anywhere. But London was definitely more cosmopolitan, and also London is browner, because up here in York, when I got here, everybody was white. It was like I was in the Aryan nation. When I was first driving around and looking at student housing, the guy showing me where to go, he's like, "Yeah, everyone's white." I said, "How did you know I was thinking that?" He goes, "The look on your face." He says, "Everyone does the same thing when they come here from America." He's like, "You're just shocked because you've never seen this." And I said, I was living in Connecticut. I was 45 minutes out of New York City. I was in Norwalk. This is new. I'm from Miami. This is not normal. And he said, "Yeah, that's what everyone says." So London is more like home. It's where you see people that are just more like people I know, and so it's conservative up here. They are a bit more surface, although that is maybe changing. I don't know. And it was just very different. The scene was very different. So I had to start writing all different kinds of poetry, because it was just, me just bitching about American politics. Of course, they were like, "Well, just get rid of George Bush." What? No. And then, so it was very different. And then they were upset that Obama didn't change everything overnight. And you're like, no, that's not how it works. So it's just a different political system here too. But I've now learned that. So now when I go to a different country and I finally speak enough of the language to crack a joke and someone laughs, I'm like, yes, so now I'm able to get here and write a poem that talks about British politics and they understand. I'm like, yes. So I'm at the point where I can now bitch about British politics. So I understand it that much. So, yeah. And now I can vote here too. I'm a citizen, and that was super important to me.
Wow.
Although Brexit didn't work out how we wanted it to be.
So when you're publishing in Stairwell.
Okay, go ahead.
When you're publishing in, oh, I'm sorry. I was just going to ask, when you're publishing with Stairwell, is there a type of, you probably have a lot of international submissions. Is there like a specific aesthetic you follow, or do you just follow the spirit of the thing, when you're looking for publication, when you actually go through the process?
I brought a couple of things up. This one is nonfiction about a woman who she's novelized her grandmother's diaries. So this is set in the Canadian prairie. So that's about life on the Canadian prairie. These are short stories about homeless people, written by homeless people. We did this for the university. We did this with the city of York, and Amnesty International, I think. And this is about climate change. It's called the Dow Revolution. It's basically a collection of all different ways to live now that the world is on fire and we have to try and live. This is about a woman who was on a tuberculosis ward at the age of 15 and 16 in the 50s.
We're
heading back there again.
Relevant.
Yeah, we love it. We love
it. Very interesting.
Yes, we really want. We want things. Yes, that is a good book. I want you to read it. It's so good. It is so good. I love it because our open mic has people from all over America and Virginia, California. We have people from Ireland. There's a guy that comes in sometimes from the Philippines and all over. And what's good about it is because if someone has trouble walking or they use a wheelchair, because this is a very old country, there are stairs everywhere. It's not new, it's old. So if the thing is 500 years old, they're not going to put an elevator in, you're not coming in. So suddenly people can go out. And there were, and so now they can come, they can join. Also, maybe they don't want to walk at night. Maybe there's no bus back to their village. So everyone can join. So we have stuff from all over England and all over the world, and geography is irrelevant. Exactly. And so that was a fantastic collection. I had so much fun putting that together. I love it. I love it. That was a labor of love. That really was. I really enjoyed that. So yeah, the poetry is, I would say poetry, the poets are probably a humanist. They're a feminist. They're a humanist. They aren't going to be sexist or racist. They aren't going to be some kind of Brexiter or Trump voter. I mean, that's the kind of thing I'm looking for. I mean, right. I'm not going to. I'll publish anything, but it's not going to be hate speech. And so there's that. I do like things about climate change. I do like things that are feminist in nature. I do make sure that the books don't have huge, stupid, ugly things in it. We
Mm-hmm.
So we do less and less poetry.
Work. I've looked at your work. One thing I noticed is that you like to work in collaboration with others, not only individuals, but even other establishments. I remember when you were in Connecticut, yes. Even your first publication, your a booklet, a poetry booklet that you published, you didn't publish it alone, you published it with somebody. When you got to the UK, you collaborated with different publishing houses. Like, yes. For instance, you work with the, I think, the different small presses. Like when you were publishing the book of the source book of Nick David, Carol's Christmas, remember?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay. You work with a lot of publishing houses, especially in 2009. You worked yes. together with. What usually pushes you to collaborate with people? I think you love to work with people a lot. So is it
I do love
based
to
on your
work
past
with
experience,
people.
or is just your instinct?
That would be my instinct. And sometimes it will be because to bring out a book can cost £800, £1,000, say $1,000 if you're going to do a lot, and you want to share the risk so that you can have, and then you share the benefits, right? And so we'll do that if someone doesn't have the ability to do the typesetting, the book formatting that we can do here, but they have the access to the author. For instance, this one about the woman with tuberculosis, I did this with Fighting Cock Press because the author, who's now died, Rita Jerem, knew the woman who ran Fighting Cock Press. And so she wanted to work with her, but the woman who ran Fighting Cock Press had no time to format the book, and her husband was getting older, and so we worked with her. And so, yeah, we do like to collaborate. But we mostly publish our own, but we work with other writers. I mean, Stairwell Books is my publishing company. It doesn't just publish me. It doesn't publish me.
Yeah, I understand. What I was talking about is apart from even your publishing house, yourself. I remember in was it some years back? That should be in 2002. You collaborated with Alan Gillett.
Yeah.
Right?
I did. I collaborated with him, definitely.
The poetry booklet there. Then that should be your first publication then, right? So
probably, yes, yes.
So I feel that you like to work with people. That's why even when you started the Stairwell Books, you started with anthologies, combining some of the works you've gathered from Wilton, times from the spoken word, etc. So I feel it's beyond just only publishing, beyond just the money. That's why I will agree with you with the fact that it is instinct. So tell me about your first publication.
Right. Alan Gillett, who lives here with me because he's my husband, so I do collaborate with him. We had been running the poetry open mic in Wilton in Connecticut, and we were going to move to England. And we were going to lose our poetry friends. And so we created a book of poetry as a way of saying goodbye and thank you for sharing your poetry with us. Some of those people I had known for 10 years, longer. And so it was a way of saying goodbye and doing this thing. And then when we came to England, and as I said, there was no poetry, so we started one. after a year here, we went, no, these poets are very good. And so we did a collaboration on the open mic here. And yes, we did that because it's a good way of having a lot of very quality work quickly. And you can hear the poets doing it and you go, oh, I want that, I want that, I want that, I want that. I want some short stories too. And so you could do that. You also have to learn how to gently say, I'm not going to take this piece. I am sorry, but perhaps we can work on it together, or maybe you can give me something else, which is what I did in geography is irrelevant. There was only 2 people I turned down completely. They had just whipped these things off quickly. There was no heart in it. That was just not working. Someone else, I really wanted a poem from this. I had heard him read somewhere else, but it just wasn't working on the page. And so I asked him to find something else for me. And then I made sure he got in. I don't just turn people down. I wanted him to be in the book. And so, yeah, I do think you're right. And then I think there would be instinct in that. Thank you. Yeah, but it's now a business, but we don't make a lot of money at it.
One of the most popular works that you've had in your publishing house, the small publishing house, is The Exhibitionist. Who are the exhibitionists? How did you arrive at that title, the name of the book? Is very catchy and hooky.
Yes, one of the poets who is in the book came up with the name, and the pub where we've been meeting to do poetry open mic every single month for 15 years until COVID is called the Exhibition Pub. So we read at the Exhibition Pub, and I said, what should the title be? He goes, we're the exhibitionists. I went, yes, stolen. So so that's the title. And again, that was a collaborative thing, wasn't it? So he came up with the title, one of the poets, and he's in the book, and he's very good. And so yeah, that's the exhibitionists. So and for a while we called ourselves the exhibitionists, and 5 or 6 of us would travel to different towns in a car, and we went up to quite a distance. We would perform in a slam, or we would perform at a literature festival. They go, can you guys come to Scarborough? And I was out of town, but the rest of them went, and that was fun. They had a good time. And so yeah, we were called the exhibitionists. And we drive around. We used to say, oh, like a big coat, but we didn't, obviously. But yeah, that was a lot of fun, actually. That was a lot of fun. Yeah.
What sort of challenges do you face in publishing and getting the books out and in the public eye, and trying to get people to actually read and buy the books?
Yes. The number one thing you need is marketing. It's really good if the book is a well-written book. That's kind of important. But the number one thing you need is marketing. And the woman who just won the Costa Award over here, the book prize of the year, not Costa, one of them. Okay, they won the book of the year. She crowdfunded for a publicist and a marketer. And it's true. Every time I looked in a newspaper, I would see an ad for this book. I would see this book. And it was called The Mermaid of Black Conch. And it's set in the Caribbean, and it's about a mermaid, but it's everywhere you looked. You saw it in this, you saw it in that, you saw it in the free newspaper, you saw an ad go by on Facebook, and the word got out. And that is probably one of the reasons why she won. If you want to win the big book awards over here, it will cost you $20,000, because you have to hire a publicist. You have to put the ads in the newspapers. You have to make sure that the newspapers will review it. You have to, if you get long listed, you have to be able to send 1,000 copies out for free. If you get short listed, you got to send more copies out for free. So it costs money.
Wow.
So for us to do it as to win the big awards, you need money. I had a very good book that I wanted to enroll into the Women's First Novel Prize. I loved this book. It was so good. It was her first novel, and you could tell a first novel because it was not perfect, but I didn't want to fix it. It was naive in a fresh way. It was beautiful. I wanted this book to go in I said, hell, if it's long listed, I'll just put a mortgage on the house. Let's do it. I had to withdraw the book because I really just didn't have the $20,000. It would have really been a mortgage. It was not me just going, oh, we'll just borrow the money. It really would have been a fortune. And I had to tell her, sweetie, if you win, you'll break me. And so I had to pull it. And so and what's bad about that is small book publishers get a lot of women We get a lot of older people. We get gay folks. We get people who can't normally find the big publishers. And so women publishers will go to small women authors will go to small publishers, but a small publisher can't afford to get a book by a woman into the big prizes. Only the big publishers can do that. And they're only going to, so it becomes, there's barriers, and then there's more barriers, and then there's more barriers.
Wow.
Unless this woman, but this woman crowdfunded, and it's fantastic. And I'm happy that she won, but that's what it is. So we have the big barrier of marketing to get into Barnes and Noble. Okay, but we do pretty well. And so what we do is we market it as best as we can, and it costs a little money. And I put a half-page ad in a magazine, or I get in another magazine, or we do something like that. We have a reach of about 35,000 people. When you look at back when people used to meet in person, and we did literature festivals and book festivals and fantasy con, because some of our books are sci-fi and fantasy and the like. We probably had a reach of about 35,000 people because of the people who come to our book launches, or who would come in front of our book table at a festival, and the outreach from that. And so that's helpful. You do a lot of book festivals. You do a lot of book launches. If you go to a book launch for one person's book, you have 2 or 3 other books on the table. So you're always promoting everyone. When someone sends me a manuscript to read, I'll say, this is great. I will look at it. You might want to consider buying a book from us, because the next book that is bought may be yours someday. So I have them pay it forward. I say, you want me to read your book, and I'm happy to, your manuscript, I'm happy to do that. And especially if I look into it and it's not crap, it's a good book, and I think, okay, maybe I could do something like this. I'll say, while you're at it, why don't you consider buying one of our books, because then you're supporting someone who came to me a year ago, just like you're doing now. And so it's a way of paying it forward. You want to keep small publishers in business, buy a book. The other thing we do is we share the profits with the authors.
Right.
It's just share.
Do you think there's any kind of way that possibly, even if you're a small press, that you can still, see you've been very successful at getting the word out? I mean, is there ways to overcome some of that resistance from those barriers that you find are very important for small presses or for indie authors to try to approach?
Yeah, I'll probably tell you it's about $1,000 a year. I'm spending about $1,000 a year, whether it's dollars or pounds, in your culture or mine, that the single unit value was the same. It's $1,000 for a flat. It's 1,000 pounds. It's whatever. So it's about the same. So I'll just say 1,000. It cost about 1,000 a year, and that's a few half-page ads. And it was hiring a publicist to give us a couple of Zoom pointer sessions, and it's those kind of things. I think we're poised to get to the next level. I really think so, and we've gotten that because we've gone. I had a book of poetry from a poet, and he managed to get mentioned by the Forward Prize. He didn't win the Forward Prize, but one of his poems inside of his book was highly commended by the Forward Prize. That moved us up a level. And so then a mid-level author who's sold millions of books about Jane Austen is now going to be publishing her children's story with us this year. And so she's now got endorsements from very famous children's book authors. So I'm going to have a famous author on the front cover of her book, and her book she's a famous woman, so she's going to sell. So we're going to be an overnight success that is going to have taken us 5 years to get here of hard work, right? We've been going for 15 years. We've been really pushing it for 5 or 6, and we're now going to be an overnight success. And it's because of going into now middle grade books. We're now selling books for children. Kids need a book. They're not going to read it on Kindle. And we're creating books that I would want to have read as a child. So a lot of my books have strong roles for girls. They are not just yet another story about a little white boy, because honestly, haven't we read enough of those? And so there's other stories. We have other voices. And again, we're really choosing very good material. And now that we've been mentioned a few times, we're getting endorsements by very famous authors, and it'll move these books to the next level. And the book that you've heard of Holly McNish, surely. And so,
yes.
Right. So she's considering writing a blurb for one of our books.
Wow.
Right. Well, I also
Excellent.
like her. I love her to bits. I've seen her a few times in person. And so, so that's going to be a big thing. But you know what? The book had to be good. So you do have to start with high quality material, but then you have to have a little bit of luck, and then you got to slowly move up the food chain. And so that's what we're doing. And I think also it helps that we're honest with our authors, and we don't lie, we don't cheat, we don't steal. And when I say we share, I mean, seriously, we do share the proceeds in that way. And so I think that's important. And we publish things that we're proud of, right?
You put your heart into it, it makes it a lot more efficient and fun and enjoyable a process. That's how I do it. TZ Press is, you know, if you have content that you enjoy and you love, and you're working with people who are interesting and fun and enjoy the process as well, that makes it all the more delightful to continue doing what you do. Is there any particular authors that you've worked with that you find just of that nature that, you know, that have really, you know, challenged and inspired you?
This guy, David Lee Morgan, is really wonderful. I highly recommend you reading anything by him ever at all. Find David Lee Morgan on YouTube. But however, his book hasn't made any money. We kept publishing it and fixing it. The books that lose money are the ones where the author refuses to do any publicity. They won't do any book launches. They do one book launch and they wait for the limousine to come to their house and balloons to fall from the sky. They think that all the work is done by writing the book. And I'm like, that's just the beginning of the journey. The rest of it is book launch, book launch, book launch. You have a copy of this book in your pocket with you at all times. You are ready to give it to someone or lend it to someone or sell it to someone, and you get the word out there. You go to the local bookshop, you do all these things. And so the ones that have lost money are those, or where the author steals the books. That's another story. And so yeah. So yeah, that's the failures are the ones where the authors just haven't done anything to promote their work. And I tell them, I say, sweetie, I don't know no one knows who you are, you know, unless you are John Grisham or you are this or that famous person. No one knows who you are. So you have to go out there and go to the public library and read your book. Go to the book launches, go to the open mics. You know, they say, what do I do? And I say, okay, take your manuscript and read a couple of poems everywhere you can. And now I say, you can go anywhere, read your poems every single night in a different country. And so, you know, get them till they go, oh, I got it. I want to hear more of that. I would like to know more of that.
I guess this is where we'll have to put a cut into this show today. You have